Hi everyone, it's Joyce here from Salubrious Events, and I have with me today Michelle Ruskin.
Yep.
And she is an acupuncturist, a Chinese doctor, a doctor of Chinese medicine and a Tai Chi teacher. And I'd like to talk to her more about Chinese medicine philosophy, ghosts, entity attachments, and that sort of stuff. Hi Michelle.
Hey Joy, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Is there anything else you'd like to add about yourself?
Oh, well, in Chinese, even being a Chinese medicine practitioner, it's a little bit like the journey of life. So you go through all these various stages and you learn so much along the way. So it's very hard to compartmentalize yourself as to what you do. It's changing all the time. So
Okay.
it's very hard to encompass it in a sentence.
We were chatting, I think about a couple of weeks ago. You said something really interesting about Chinese medicine and entity attachments. Do they acknowledge entity attachments and its effect on illness?
Yeah, so historically, so in the classics, which were written around 2,000 years ago, there's lots of references to entities. So it's a little bit like the Greek tradition where they talk about the evil eye. So when a person got mysteriously sick very suddenly, they would often treat that as an entity attachment, and they had treatment protocols to treat. And Chinese medicine evolved over many years, so sometimes it might not have been entity attachments, it could have actually been environmental illness, etc. But there are points which are referred to as the ghost points, window to the sky points, which you would use in cases of entity attachments.
Oh wow, where are those points?
Most of them are around the neck and the head. So we talk about, there's a lot of wind points, and we talk about the wind being the carrier of 100 diseases. So you could think of an external entity as being some form of wind being able to enter the body. So there's points around the neck and upper body that you can use to release points. And so it's, again, it's a philosophy of clearing wind from the body.
Oh, so are they saying that entities or certain energies can enter through those wind points?
Well, that seems to be the philosophy. And we have this protective chi called Wei Qi, and that protects our body from external influences. So that can be things such as viruses, flus, environmental changes, but also it's other people's energies, and you could also include entities or evil, we would call them evil chi, pernicious chi. So,
right. So how tell me more about the protective
chi?
Yeah,
So
chi.
it's a little bit like your immune system, your aura, your ability to interact with the outside world, all kind of rolled into one. So it's, if you could imagine like a shield around your body, which is a protective energy that helps protect you. So we know that when we're tired and vulnerable, other people have a higher ability to influence our energy. So you can feel drained being around someone. When you're feeling good and strong, other people's energy doesn't affect you so much. So that would be also determining how strong your Wei Qi is in that moment. So your ability to protect your own Qi. So it's a little bit like that, again, we talk about in metaphysical energy with your chakras and your aura. It's like having an intact aura that will protect you from the external environment.
Wow, interesting.
So that does include physical, emotional, spiritual.
So is there some sort of routine someone should do every day to protect themselves?
Protect their Wei Qi?
Yes.
So one of the more recent therapies, I guess you could call it, out there is Wim Hof Breathing. So I don't know, many people are familiar with Wim Hof.
Yes.
That technique is fantastic because it's really exercising the lungs, and the lungs are the first line of defense. So if we can strengthen our lung qi, we strengthen our immune system, and it also helps protect our Wei Qi. We need to take care of our diet and our gut, that also protects our Wei Qi, and your intention. So if you have a very clear intention about your level of protection, this plays an important role. So we know that the mind has a very powerful effect on our health and our well-being. So this is where it can really come into play. Have daily rituals to protect yourself, and at the end of every day to clear your energy from other people's residue.
I can really relate to that because I see a lot of my clients, they're only coming to me obviously because of their problems, and at the end of the day I'm left exhausted, and if I don't have that routine, I'd be absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
And it does feel really heavy.
Yeah. And you kind of have a feeling it's not yours.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. And once it's cleared, I think, oh my God, like
Yeah.
it's so
You just
different.
lost 10 kilos.
Yeah, yes. So it's so important if you work with people, I think, like a lot of people.
Absolutely. When you're seeing a lot of people who are unwell, who are, particularly with mental illness, you have to be very, very, very protective of your energy. And just people who are struggling, it's really important. Like it's not being discompassionate to disconnect from them at the end of the day. You don't need to take their problems home with you. So, my daily ritual is, I'll have my meditation practice, try to do some breathing practice. Maybe it's Qigong, yoga, Tai Chi, something that's very mindful and embodied. And at night, I definitely have a shower at the end of the day, and that's part of my ritual for the water to cleanse. And there are other days, particularly when I'm working, I try to go for a swim in the bay before I start work. So that's very purifying as well. And that can be quite extraordinary how much it changes your energy.
What is it about ocean water, do you think?
Oh, well, I think it's a number of things. Like the salt is very cleansing. Being such a big body of water, we're connected to the whole planet through the bay, like through the ocean, right? So you step into the ocean and you are connected to every part of the planet. And you are very, very present. Because the water is so quite cold at the moment, you are completely in the present moment. You're not thinking about what you're having for breakfast when you get home. You're just thinking about that very moment. So it's very enlivening.
Definitely. And the negative ions?
The negative ions, absolutely. So we're quite privileged to be here quite close to the water because the air we breathe is a lot cleaner. And I really notice it when I go to the northern suburbs or western suburbs, when you're away from the water, how different the air is, the quality of the air.
Definitely. So in the Chinese medicine philosophy, going back to the ghosts,
Yeah.
what's their concept of a ghost? Like what do they say they are?
Wow, I'll try to explain it the best I can. They would then generally, just from my experience or from what I've read, they just refer to them as evil chi. And what do they call it? I'll have to try and think about what they call it. Because there has been definite references to external entities. And I think that's how it translates from Chinese language into English.
Wow.
So they don't really give it a description. They don't. From what I've read, like there are a lot of Chinese texts that haven't been translated, so I'm very limited in my knowledge on this. I haven't gone into it so deeply, but I think it's quite interesting that was definitely a phenomenon that they acknowledged in their medicine, because it was definitely way more esoteric before the Chinese Cultural Revolution. And after the Cultural Revolution, a lot of that more esoteric aspects of Chinese medicine they tried to eliminate them. So there's a lot of wisdom that's been lost.
Yes, very interesting.
Yeah, so it's really the people who can read the classical Chinese, so it's not just the current Chinese characters, it's classical Chinese, which is quite different. And so you have to be able to read that and translate it into English, which is not always easy, as some people know. It's trying to because the classical characters are pictographs, so you're trying to create a word that represents that pictograph, and it's not always easy. So it's like the concept of chi is very hard to explain in English. It's one character, and we'd take a whole paragraph to translate that one character, you know.
Yeah. Wow. Because my concept of what I think chi is like almost everything. Like it's energy.
It's
Is that, yeah?
Well, it is,
Yeah.
but there's all these different types of chi. Like we talk about the chi that we get from food, the chi that we get from air, the chi that our parents give us, you know, the chi that is, you know, the chi that you find in food, like natural food, fruit and vegetables, is completely different from the chi that you'll find in processed foods. So, and same again with the sea, like you'll have different chi that comes from the sea as compared to the chi that comes from the forest. Like it's all very different, but it's the same.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so everything has a different flavour, you know.
Uh-huh.
And we talk about, even with the masks, you know, people go, there's no danger in wearing masks, you know, you're not going to die of lack of oxygen. But, you know, we know that you're not getting any negative ions when you're breathing in your own air. So as soon as you take off this mask and you breathe, it's like you're actually able to intake chi, like the chi from the earth and the chi from the air. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's...
So we've got such a intimate relationship with chi.
Yeah,
Like we
yeah.
ingest it in us.
Yes.
And so there's good and there's bad chi. But I don't think in the Western world people think about that
No.
too much.
No. So, yeah, and that's the thing, evil chi, you could call the virus a form of evil chi. And or perverse chi, and we would call chi that runs amok in your body as evil chi or perverse chi. So it's making your body do things that's not normal, and then you're trying to identify, is this a natural phenomenon caused by wind or virus, or is it something else? And the something else, you can most likely relate to this when you see people with a serious mental health condition, whether it's bipolar, how someone swings like that. You could say, you know, where's their spirit gone? It's like their spirit has been taken over by someone else's spirit.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Have you had a client who you treated for bipolar or?
I worked in drug and alcohol for 10 years, and you definitely see some interesting characters in terms of where they're at. And I've seen people with schizophrenia with very unusual symptoms that are not really what you would perceive to be schizophrenia if you actually looked at all the sort of things that they could do to ease it for themselves. For example, I had and this is one of the problems with smoking dope at a very young age, is it can leave you very vulnerable to external entities. And this one young man I met, he actually came from a long line of psychics and clairvoyants. And these people, his grandmother, mother were channelers. And he started smoking dope at about 15. And it was like he just opened the door to a lot of negative influences. So he would hear these voices all the time, but they're all very negative, and the only way he could get away from these voices were to put headphones on. So, you know, so the thing is with schizophrenia, we think it's an internal in the brain, but he was able to ease his symptoms by putting on, not headphones, earmuffs. So,
Wow.
so kind of interesting, right?
It is interesting. So what would you do for someone like that?
Well, you're doing a lot of, we call it Shen Calming. So Shen is our spirit. So what we're trying to do is bring the spirit back home. So anchoring in the spirit, nourishing the spirit, so it actually allows that person to maintain a sense of who they are in amongst that. And it takes a very long time, but over time they can find themselves again, and it's then being able to make all those choices in their lives that help strengthen their own sense of self. So it took quite a while, but this person made a lot of choices to cut out the sugar, the caffeine, all of these things that were actually contributing to the worsening of his symptoms and his inability to stay within his own body, he was able to shift out of, and he even quit smoking. It was an amazing story. He ended up, finding work, going back to study. He moved out of home. So,
Wow.
it's a slow progress, but
Yes.
that was just a weekly group acupuncture treatment where the clients could turn up voluntarily for their treatments.
How long did it take him?
It would have taken a couple of years, but keeping in mind when I first met him, that was my very first session there. It was very overwhelming. We had about 12 people in a group, and this person stuck out his tongue, because we look at the tongue, we read the pulse, and he had a black tongue. And my first thought was, oh my God, it says if a person has a black tongue, it means impending death. And I'm just like, try not to look surprised or shocked. And then I asked him how he's feeling, and he said, I'm so bad. My mum has to call the cat team 3 times a week because I just want to kill myself. And it really was impending death. Like, he was really at a crisis point. So he went from wanting, like, every day wanting to die to transforming his life. So it's pretty powerful, It's very, very subtle. But the beautiful thing about it is that it's so subtle, you don't see it happening. You just go through this beautiful transformation, and you start to hit these milestones where you're making choices and evolving as a person and going through that natural progression of life,
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. It's interesting that he was facing death, and it manifests like with the tongue.
The tongue.
Yeah, it's such a, it's like the body really mirrors.
Yeah.
Our internal struggles.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that is pretty important as part of our diagnosis, is that we look at people's tongues, and that tells us what's going on inside the body, and it sort of gives an idea of what's going on in the mind as well.
Wow.
So you can look at someone's tongue and you go, oh, have you been sleeping properly? Have you been anxious? You can see things on the tongue that will manifest.
Wow, I haven't heard of that.
Really?
Before, it was always the eyes.
Yeah,
like,
that's more naturopath medicine.
The tongue. So what's so significant about it?
Well, the tongue, we look at the upper part of the tongue. So the tip of the tongue represents the heart and the lungs. The middle part of the tongue represents the stomach and spleen, which is more to do with our digestive power. The back of the tongue is the lower part of the body, so large intestine, kidneys, bladder, the uterus, prostate, and then the sides of the tongue are liver and gallbladder. So we're looking at the actual shape of the tongue, the colour. Like, if you looked at your own tongue every day, you will see it has its own, it will tell you about how it responds to what you ate yesterday, or the colour, if it's swollen, if there's teeth marks. Sometimes the sides of the tongue will be purple or red, and does the redness go all the way to the tip? And that way we know that the liver, if there's a lot of emotions going on in the body, like frustration, anger, irritability, we can see if that's affecting the heart and the spirit just through the tongue.
Wow.
Yeah, you're also looking at cracks and coating, and it's quite a science, actually.
Wow. I'm going to look at my tongue when I get home.
It's actually a really good exercise to look at your tongue. And most people worry about a coat. They think, oh, I've just eaten an ice cream or something. But it's actually quite normal to have a very thin coat on the tongue. But if you've got a thick coat that you could literally scrape off with your fingernail, we would say you've got too much dampness in your body, so you need to be looking at cutting out your sugar, cutting out your dairy, maybe doing a bit more exercise, and trying to encourage good digestion.
Okay, so what does a healthy tongue look like?
Oh, if you look at a baby's tongue, they say like the tongue itself should have this spirit to it. So it's a pink colour, not too red, not too pale. I don't think I've ever seen an adult with a healthy tongue. Like, we've all got We've all got things that we're working with, you know. Not many people have a perfect tongue. But maybe, babies and small children.
Oh wow. I'll ask them to stick out their tongue
Yeah,
next time.
maybe just not super healthy people
Yeah.
are coming for acupuncture, maybe. If
Yeah. So I want to just get back to, you were talking about, I guess, your client who smoked dope a lot from a young
Yeah.
age, and I would assume also alcohol would be another avenue of entity attachments.
Yeah, well, anything where you're highly addicted to something,
Ah, okay.
you
So
know,
certain foods.
it can be. I find that food's less so, but when there's like high, I think caffeine is probably a big one, like too much caffeine, whether it's through soft drink, energy drinks, coffee, but particularly drugs on the developing body. That's what I've seen mostly, particularly hard drugs. Like I know a lot of people think that smoking dope is harmless, but you know, you and I would have seen in first-hand experience what smoking drugs at a young age can do, and it's like, especially with young people who are victims of abuse. Like we know that people with victims who are victims of abuse are more vulnerable to entity attachments. And it's, you know, because there is that disassociation with the experience, and if you leave your body, you're just making way for something else to come in, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've seen, there's someone I know who, smoked from a very young age, and together with the alcohol, sometimes I see the face change.
Yeah.
And I've seen red eyes.
Yeah.
And behavior changes. Like I know it's not that person. That person has hissed at me at least 3 times.
Wow.
It's just really, I just know
You just think
there's something else there.
Yeah, there's something else there.
Yeah.
Speaking of something else, let me get that spider.
Oh, dear. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you.
They're good luck.
Are they?
Yeah,
oh.
sure.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess with Chinese medicine, there'll be many concepts that in the Western, I guess, culture we wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
And like even I'm from Singapore, and growing up, like if I had an ulcer, my relatives would say, "Oh, you're very heaty."
Yeah. It's
And it's really saying, you got to stop eating fried food and things that are associated with heatiness.
Yes.
But I understood that. But
Yeah.
that's not a concept. It's not a concept that we use
Not in the West.
in the West.
It's really unfortunate, because this is, I think, one of the brilliant things about the Asian culture is that they actually understand the energetic natures of food really, really well. And they use food as their medicine without even making a big deal out of it. You know, it's just like you say, if you've got heat symptoms, and heat can be, like in children, it could be behavioural changes. Like when a little kid, like with a kid with ADHD, for example, when they have those flare-ups, it's like heat has just risen up and creates this anger and frustration. And so you would want to be making sure that the child has not got too many heating things in the diet. So for example, sugar, you'd never give a kid with ADHD caffeine or Coca-Cola or something like that. So sugar, caffeine, even chili, things like that can be a bit too heating on people's bodies. So it's learning Asian cultures have a general acceptance of understanding what the body needs and using food as medicine. And that food as medicine is the number one rule, like in complementary health in all forms. It's like, let food be your medicine. And we have somehow lost connection to that, or we never had a connection to that in the West. So
Why do you think that is? Why do you think we've lost that?
Well, I don't think we ever had it. I don't think we ever had it. So it's all like for my culture, which is, I have a very Anglo background. It's just meat and 3 veg. There was it was really just about sustenance. You feed the body what you can afford. You know, it was very, very conventional. And now with modern processed foods, that's completely, it's completely changed again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really hope that Asian cultures don't lose that ability to recognise the nature of food and to teach that to their children. It'd be a really real shame if they lost that.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
But I guess, with this culture of consumerism, and it's about advertising.
Yeah.
And the nutrition that we were taught in school was really more about the pyramid.
Yeah, which has been completely proven to be not healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the concept of really knowing the energy and the chi of the different foods.
Yeah.
So yeah, can you take us through the fire, the water, the wood,
Yeah.
those different types of foods?
Well, I can...
Examples?
Examples, yes. So in Chinese medicine, there's 5 elements. So it's a little bit different to the Indian elemental categorization. So we have fire. So fire foods will be, if you think about summer. So the foods that are seasonal in summer will most likely have a tendency towards being fiery in nature. So things like, chili is definitely fire, and it's kind of interesting. In Thailand, for example, they do eat a lot of chili, and we say it opens the pores. So it actually allows your body to sweat and it cools your body down. It's it's very almost counterintuitive. Then we have earth. So earth is late summer, and we move more towards, we think of root vegetables as being very earthy. Then there's metal. I'm trying to think what a metal food. We think of metal as being good for the lungs. So pungent foods. These are spices. So Indian foods would be considered very pungent. Then we have water. So if you think of, seafood would be a classic case, a classic example of water. And then we have wood. So wood, a lot of your spring vegetables, things like coriander, sprouts, all those things that are really fresh and full of yang would be considered wood foods. It's complicated to sort of try and categorize all things. They usually use meat as a way to categorize the 5 flavors. Like, I think lamb is very fiery. It's very warming for the body. And pork and things like that, but I don't eat meat, so I don't even think about those. But yeah, the best thing you can do is eat seasonal produce. So that will be the most appropriate foods for your body that time of year, because we go through different changes throughout the year. We go into winter, we start to withdraw. We should actually be doing less. We don't live according to the seasons anymore either, but in winter we should be doing less, so we actually need to eat less foods. So you're thinking about what's nourishing and then warming. So you want to be eating things like soups, casseroles, stews, very well cooked foods. When you go into spring, so we're into the wood phase, this is where you can eat your salads and raw foods. But in Chinese medicine, we just can't condone eating raw foods in winter. Like, it just doesn't make sense to eat a cold diet in a cold climate. You need to warm the body. And we're also looking at a person's individual constitution. So for example, someone with my constitution, it's not going to work for me to eat raw food. I actually need to have cooked food and light, like eat small meals more regularly. Whereas some other person they'll have a different constitution, so they might be able to handle raw food. So this is where it gets quite complex with all these different diets out, finding out what works for you. And this is where you can combine all those different philosophies and try and figure out what's going to be the best, rather than saying, yep, I'm going to be raw food vegan. And, if you're a really what we'd call a deficient kind of a person, where you're running low on energy all the time, it's just not going to work for you. You're not going to be able to extract the chi out of the food to make it work for you.
how did you find out your diet? You said you don't eat
Well,
meat.
I think I've tried every diet under the sun.
Yes.
And you learn through experience. So I think way back in my 20s I tried the high protein diet, and it just completely blocked me up. It didn't work for my body at all. And what else have I fast. I try to fast at least once a year. I do a 5-day water fast. And the fasting is challenging. I can do it mentally, but my body, I just go really cold. Like I really, it's one of those things where you really have to stop working and just do nothing for 5 days rather than trying to push through and keep continuing on with your daily activities. And so yeah, rest is really important. But I do find that I've eaten organic since my late 20s, so I try to minimise the exposure to pesticides and herbicides, and I rarely eat processed foods. And so when you eat clean food, minimise meat. I've only been vegetarian for maybe two years, and prior to that I just eat chicken and fish. So it's been a gradual progression out of meat, and so again it takes effort, to get your protein, make sure you're balancing your meals. But I tend to eat cooked food. Like my breakfast will be a quinoa porridge with broccoli, cauliflower, carrot, mushrooms, capsicum, ginger. It's probably a bit more like an Asian breakfast.
Yes.
Yeah, and I find that's very sustaining for me. And I
yeah.
get my vegetables, get my protein, and the ginger is warming, so yeah, it kind of gets my yang going for the day.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really just trial and error.
Yes. Okay. So there's no one size fits all.
No, definitely not. Although, modern medicine will say the modified Mediterranean diet should be the baseline. And if you look at, it's a pretty good one. And the thing is, and even paleo is pretty good because you're just cutting out all your processed foods. You're cutting out a lot of inflammatory foods. So they're a good place to start, actually.
Great. Did we cover wind food?
Wind.
Yeah.
Well, so wind is not covered in the 5 elements.
Okay.
It is separate. Obviously it's there, but it doesn't come under the 5 element categories. But what would be a wind food? Wind, if there are things that create wind internally, and it's not necessarily gas, flatulence, right? So some people, for example, MSG for me creates wind. So if I have MSG, I get this upward rushing of energy, and I can turn my head like this and it feels like I have visual distortion. So that would be an example of having wind. So wind, we think of wind always goes up. So when you have things like visual disturbance or even ringing in the ears, that can sometimes be wind, or headache, red eyes. Sometimes people get a headache after food. That might be wind, a type of wind coming up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's not classically the burping and flatulence,
Yes. Oh, that's interesting. And yeah, you mentioned coffee before. What's the nature of coffee?
Coffee is...
Because lots of people seem addicted to it.
Yes, so coffee is bitter, and bitter in Chinese medicine is actually quite good for the heart.
Oh.
And it's warming as well. Maybe we just all need to have more warmer hearts.
Oh, yes.
But it does actually create that, it feels like a yang energy, right? So it feels like yang, but it's actually quite depleting if you have too much. So it's like anything, everything in moderation.
Okay.
But yeah, the bitterness is, in Chinese medicine, the bitterness is quite good for the heart.
Okay.
But so,
Heart.
yeah, so bitter, rocket is a bitter food, and you would say that it would be good for the heart energy as well.
Okay.
And salads and things are good for the heart.
What about the lungs?
Lungs is pungent, so we think of spices like cinnamon, cloves, your coriander, cumin, things like that. So pungent foods.
Okay. Wow. Stomach?
Stomach is sweet,
Uh-huh.
and so this is often when people start to crave sweet foods. They're looking for digestive energy, but it's sort of a misreading of what your body's actually wanting. So when you start to crave sweet, people go for the sugar. But things like sweet potato, carrot are actually really sweet. They're sweet in nature. Even white rice is considered sweet in nature.
Yes.
So it's a different kind of idea to what we perceive as being sweet.
Okay. So are you saying that what does the stomach need? Is it that sweetness?
Yes.
Stomach needs sweet.
Yeah.
Food?
So if you're
Yeah?
sometimes you'll want to eat sugar. You'll go to grab something, like for example in the mid-afternoon when you start to have a bit of a dip, you'll go, oh, I need something sweet. But if you actually stop and ask yourself, what does my body actually need right now? It says, I need energy. So you might actually choose something a little bit more appropriate to give you energy rather than the quick fix.
Okay. Yep. Right.
So it's challenging, but most people will go for the quick energy boost rather than, if you had some carrot in the afternoon, it might give you that sweet fix.
Yes. I don't like carrots.
So, well, sweet potato.
Yeah, sweet potato.
But even some fruit or something, you'll get that sweetness.
Yeah.
And then the liver, the kidneys are, or the water element is salty, and then the wood element is sour. So things like sour plums, lemons, vinegar, that's all wood.
Oh, okay. Wow.
It's very
so
common.
much to learn.
It's so much to learn. It's like I don't know everything. I
Yes.
certainly don't know everything. It's like you realise how much you don't know when you start going down a particular path. And Chinese medicine is so diverse. There's so many different theories. There's so many different categories, and then using acupuncture to go down more esoteric pathways and into sacred geometry pathways. It's a completely different field all of its own, and a little bit more experimental and
So tell me about that. Sacred geometry and Chinese medicine.
So many years ago I did a workshop with this Mickey Osanki, who came to Australia, and he's one of those very unusual characters. He does a lot of, it's like he can have acid trips without taking acid. He's very very attuned to what's going on around, and he started coming up with these patterns to integration patterns and clarity patterns, and we call it heart Shaoyun esoteric patterns. So helping you align to your heart energy, or if there's a lot of fear in your body, you might use a kidney pattern to help align your heart into the cosmos and to figure out what you're meant to be doing here on the earth. So it can be used in a multitude of ways, and it really depends on what the person presents with. You might just go, yep, you need integration, or someone's been through a very profound experience and they've got they've just been given a whole heap of information, don't know how to integrate it. You can do the very simple patterns to help integrate.
Wow. So is using patterns to communicate to the body?
Yeah, well, it's like connecting the body to the cosmos.
Oh.
And so you have to be able to see things in sort of 3 or 4D, like you put the needles on the body, but they will actually be in a tetrahedron shape if you use your imagination. So it's using like images of platonic solids on the body and very complex double tetrahedrons and things like that in terms of needling and tree of life patterns.
Wow.
So they can be, it can be quite profound when you get these treatments fairly regularly. It's quite beautiful.
Did he get quite a bit of success? Do you know?
Well, it attracts a certain type of crowd, right? Okay. So the people who are really attracted to that will find people who really want that kind of work. And, even now people will come, they'll just, if they've done journeying with, ayahuasca or plant medicine, they'll come for those kind of treatments after their journeys to help anchor the information in.
Oh, okay. Wow. I wanted to ask you about longevity
Yes.
as well, because I know is that something very, I guess, a central theme in Chinese medicine?
Yeah, well, the central theme is prevention of disease.
Okay.
So historically, which I think this is fantastic, you would only pay your doctor to keep you well, and if you fell sick, you didn't pay them.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So that was your
That's a good
main,
system.
that was the job of the doctor, was to make sure you never got sick.
Oh.
So it's definitely about prevention of disease. And, one of the classics that I've been reading recently, they talked about how the ancients did live well beyond 100 years, but then something shifted and we started dying at a much younger age. So, and their belief is that we stopped living according to the seasons, we stopped living according to the energy of nature, we forgot to listen and watch how nature responds, and that we should be mimicking how nature responds. And we've just forgotten how to do that. We go on with our busy lives and we shut ourselves off from nature.
Yeah, definitely. Very artificial.
Yeah, and it's just even, even working, whether it's 9 to 5 every single day of the year.
That's unnatural.
Yeah,
It
it's
feels
unnatural. And some people working 12 hours a day, 16 hours a day.
Yep.
Rain, hail or shine, cold, hot,
Yes.
So we're not able to actually live according to the seasons if you're working for someone else, for example.
Yeah. Okay, what about anti-aging?
Okay.
Can we reverse?
Can we reverse?
Keep youthful?
Yeah, well, one of the, we know through modern medicine now that diet is really, really important. We know through epigenetics that your mind is really important, and your lifestyle, your stress levels. So there's enough evidence to show that, we have a genetic blueprint of how our lives may turn out, but we also know that we are not our genes. So if we live a life where we're minimizing stress, eating the right foods, living a right lifestyle, we can live quite long and quite well without going down the same pathway that our parents went down, or grandparents, for example. So, as an example, I have autoimmune predisposition, and also things like anxiety, depression, obesity. I have genetic markers for all of these things, and you can actually make choices to not go down that pathway. And I'm quite lucky that I'm disciplined, so it's not even an option not to eat well, exercise. I'm very, very mindful about stress. So I've also learned that genetically I have some markers that mean that I don't actually cope with stress very well. And intuitively I've chosen a lifestyle where I minimize my stress. So, my goal is to outlive my grandparents for sure. So we can definitely increase our longevity, and it's not just about living long but living well. So if you do have pretty ordinary genes, you do the best you can and live the best you can. It's really important to get on top of your mental attitude and do your best to embrace life.
Yeah, for sure. And you look a lot younger than what you are.
Thank you.
When I first met you, I thought you were, at least 10 years younger. So you must be doing something right.
Well, I hope so. Sometimes I look in the mirror and think, what happened? But, I think not eating processed foods makes a really big difference. I'm not a sugar person. It's never really been my thing, actually. I just don't have really much of a desire for sugar. But it's interesting. Salt, on the other hand, I love. Like, as in, if I have Celtic salt in the house, it's nothing for me to stick my finger in it. And just, I actually really love the taste of saltiness. But, I have heart disease in the family, so you don't want to go down that path either. So I think knowledge is definitely power. If you know, like when you know that there are at least 350 chemicals that they spray on your food that you buy from the supermarket, and not half of them, not half, probably 3/4 of them haven't been tested for safety, you just go, yeah, I don't think I'll do that. I think I'll pay the money, buy organic, and I'm just happy to know where what was going into my food, you know, and that goes into your body. So my goal really is to minimise stress internally and externally.
And it's not as easy as it sounds. Like,
No.
you know, you were telling me you were tempted to work an extra day.
Yeah.
And then you had to really pull back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so that's the nature of I guess it's the nature of the healer. Like, you're here to look after people. I'm in service to humanity. And always one of the biggest things for the healer to learn is to look after yourself first. And I say this to the mums that come and see me. It's like, you're like the sun and the family are like the planets. So if you're out of whack, everybody else is going to be out of whack. So the only way I can really look after other people is if I look after myself first. And I get busy at work, and then I try to do my best for my patients, and sometimes that means they need to come more frequently, and if I haven't got space, it kind of stresses me out, and I think, oh, maybe I could work an extra day, and then it's like, no, just keep your boundaries. So I have to have the little coach on my shoulder saying no.
Yes. Oh, yeah, it's easier said than done.
It is easier said than done.
That's something I really need to
But I mean,
learn.
you know, when you're looking after yourself well and you're strong, it's actually easier to say no. And then when you're deficient, you're tired, you end up saying yes to things that you don't even have the energy for. And so I kind of like that philosophy of, if someone asks you something, if it's not a definite yes in your heart, then it's a no.
Right.
Something
to remind.
But you know what I mean. It's like someone asks you out for a coffee and you go, yeah, I really want to see that person. And then someone else will ask you and you go, you know it's going to be a drag.
Yes.
So I just say yes when your heart says yes.
Okay. That's a really good thing to remember.
That spider's really loving you.
Oh no, can you please?
That's twice.
Is that the same spider?
Yeah, it's telling you something.
Telling me. What does the spider symbolise?
I'm sure it's got to be good luck, right?
Okay. Yeah.
It's part of the mystery school.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's got lots of eyes and lots
of legs.
Why are we so afraid of it? Must be
Yeah.
either cultural upbringing or someone's poisonous.
Yeah, you'll have to meditate on it.
Yeah, okay.
It's definitely that shoulder. Wants to tell you something.
Right shoulder. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say before we finish up?
I guess the biggest thing in health and healing is the heart. Like, looking after the spirit is the most important part of Chinese, well, we call it Chinese medicine, in Oriental medicine. So whichever path you choose to go down, looking after the heart and the spirit is the most important part of that treatment. So if someone comes into you with, like, I've got a lady who's got a knee problem. She had surgery and the knee is now much worse than what it was before she had surgery. But the most important thing for me is her mind and her consciousness and how she copes with that pain. The pain may be there for a long time, but it's how she actually copes with it is the most important part, and it's her quality of life and how she lives. So this is all to do with our spirit. It's got actually nothing to do with God or belief in God. It's actually about how you interact with the world, how you see your life. Can you still grow and be joyful in amongst the pain?
Yes.
And I've seen some amazing examples of people who have been crippled by pain, but they actually live very, very spiritual and connected lives. And they still bring beauty to the world and joy to the world.
Wow.
So it's really trying to get that person to connect in with that aspect of themselves. So the physical kind of thing is it's not that it's irrelevant, but it's not always the priority when people come in, even though they think it is, you know.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
The spirit and the heart.
Yes.
So interesting you say those two, and it's not the brain or the...
It's not the brain. Yeah, we talked about this. So in Chinese classics, they rarely refer to the brain.
Wow, that is so interesting.
Yeah.
It's so different.
And there is that thing of that if you are, you know, I don't know if it's true or not, but if you ask Asian cultures, who are you, they point to their heart.
Beautiful.
You know, they're not pointing to that. No one points to their head and say, "I'm,
So
I'm
true.
Michelle." You know, this is me.
Yes.
So, the heart is what houses the spirit.
That's what I was going to ask
Yeah.
you. Yes.
Yeah.
The house.
The heart
Sorry, the
houses the spirit.
The heart houses the spirit.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That definitely rings true for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. Where can we find you?
Oh, well, you can find me online,
Yes.
brightonacupuncture.com.au, and I'm just here working in Brighton here, so great location,
Yes.
close to the beach. You can come for a treatment, then go for a dip in the sea afterwards.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah, Brighton, so that's in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. Yes, yes. And I want to show you this lovely... We're in the graveyard. It's just been peaceful. Okay. Oops. All right. So yeah, we're in Brighton. Yeah. So thank you, Michelle, and I'll put the link below this interview. But thank you so much. I've learnt so much, and yeah, look after your hearts, look after your spirit, get back to nature, eat less processed foods. Yeah?
And be more joyful.
And be more joyful.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. All right, bye. See you.